What's going on, guys? It is Garrett and Lincoln from RUNAMUCK MMA coming at you with this week's episode of the Ninth Corner of the Octagon.
What's up?
Episode 17, I believe. 17 or 18.
Oh my goodness, we're gonna be professionals at this soon.
Eventually, maybe we'll get to a
we're
point.
We're gonna have to be reading off ads.
Oh yeah, in a few more years, maybe.
This episode is brought to you by Spotify.
Body Armor. Wait.
E3.
O'Charlie's.
O'Charlie's.
The official restaurant of the UFC.
Winnie the Pooh.
In theaters. Soon, maybe. Anyway.
All right, main event.
Yes.
So, questionable decision. Edgar wins the decision. What do you think about it?
I thought it was close.
I thought it was close, but
I thought it was.
saying,
are you one of those?
Go first. You go first.
Okay. Okay. Do I think Edgar deserved the decision? I do think. Obviously, honestly, I think he did enough. I think either fighter could have done enough to win the decision here. A very close split decision. You know, I didn't think anything of it. I was watching the fight, obviously, but yeah, I think Edgar did do enough. I think Edgar actually looked really good versus what he's looked like in the recent past, especially in his last fight against the Korean Zombie. I think he just looked really good at 135. I think Munhoz looked really, really good too. But I do think that Edgar's constant movement and his use of volume actually really is what really won him the fight here. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he did get takedowns, which we always know that the takedowns, depending on where you stand in a fight, can make a difference on the scorecards. But I also think it was the fact that the judges watching also kind of knew that the takedowns that he was going for wasn't necessarily in an attempt to get or secure takedowns. It was to open up shots. You know, it was an attempt to open up big hooks on the breakaway, get his opponent worried about the takedown so that Frankie can come up with a good 1-2, something like that. And I think a lot of that has to do with the commentating team and the judges being able to hear them. I'm not joking when I say that either. I genuinely think that with actual professionals commentating on what the fighters are going through and the judges being able to hear that actually makes the judges realize that's what the fighters are working towards. So I think that led to this split decision win for Frankie Edgar. Even though I also agree that Munhoz did a good job. He did. His striking was definitely on point. Obviously, I have the stats pulled up here on the screen right next to us, and we've got a higher significant strike count for Pedro. But in terms of amount of strikes thrown, obviously goes to Edgar. Amount of takedowns obviously goes to Edgar. If we were to look at the significant strikes across the whole 9 yards, Edgar is hitting more head strikes. He's hitting more body strikes. He's throwing more head strikes. I mean, Pedro swamps him in terms of the leg strikes, and even so much to the point where Edgar is literally limping after the fight. But honestly, dude, that's just one of those. I would hate to have judged that fight because I think it was so close. I think it could have gone either way.
It really was close. When I watched the fight, I was just leaning more towards Pedro, but I could see the decision. I just wanted to get that out of the way because I figured there would be some controversy around it.
Now, I'll ask you this, because Pedro, I actually got through reading an article where Pedro was talking about how he believes he without a doubt should have won that fight. And
that's what I had read the same article and was wondering what your opinion on all of this was.
Now, I do think he brings up an interesting point. How much it factors into things. I hope it doesn't factor in that much, because then that kind of just means bad news. And what I mean is that Pedro is not necessarily a no-name, but his reputation is nowhere near that of Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar is a former lightweight champion. He's a man that's fought in 3 different weight classes. Going into this fight, this is his first time fighting in his 3rd weight division. He's a great guy. He's got a lot of wins. He's had the most time in the Octagon. It was his 27th fight in the UFC.
And he still looks like he's got more time.
Yeah, I mean, only 38. What 1 year older than Stipe Miocic.
Yeah.
And he looked great. That was one thing I really took away from the fight, was just how great Frankie Edgar looked, how natural he looked at 135.
I have it written down in my notes, is that Frankie Edgar looks great at bantamweight.
Yeah.
And it was also funny because then even Dana White brought up that he had texted some of the old matchmakers and said, remember when we used to always give Edgar a hard time just to move down a few weight classes?
Yeah.
He just would never do it. And now he's doing it at 38 and he looks amazing.
He really does. But I do think, to give some credence to Pedro's point, I feel like part of him feels like the reason he lost the decision was because of Edgar's reputation, was because he was fighting a former champion. He's fighting a guy who's fought he's a veteran. Everybody loves Frankie Edgar. No, I don't know anybody that genuinely dislikes Frankie Edgar aside from like Gray Maynard or somebody. You know?
Who knows who that is anymore?
Exactly. Just some coach. But I understand what he's saying. And we know from history tells us that the UFC as an organization functions on popularity. It's a big popularity contest. Because, I mean, how many people do we know have been skipped over for chances at title shots or what have you, simply because another fighter was more popular than them? The money game. It's a game about money, and it came to be that maybe, this person was more popular than this person. They got the decision. If we were talking about just in terms of people getting more places in life, Conor McGregor got a fight with Khabib Nurmagomedov after not fighting for like 2 years in MMA, and got to completely skip over interim champion, I believe at the time, Tony Ferguson, who rightfully earned that title shot. And then you go to
Tony fought on the co-main event of that card.
Yeah.
So he might have already been stripped of the title at that point, but nonetheless, he still got skipped over.
Exactly. Nonetheless, he was still the next person that should have fought Nurmagomedov. If we're talking about people in fights, George St. Pierre getting that controversial decision over Johnny Hendricks.
All the way with that argument right there.
Yeah. So because George St. Pierre, greatest of all time, really likable guy, everybody loves him, one of the biggest names of the UFC. Frankie Edgar has always been one of the biggest names of the smaller guys. You know, in the lower weight classes, Frankie Edgar was technically one of the greats. He's still active. You know, he beat the likes of BJ Penn, had one of the greatest trilogies of all time with Gray Maynard. He's just great. He's just a great guy.
He's just always been there.
So it does make me, even though I don't think that's why he won the fight personally, I do understand that point that Pedro Munhoz is making, and it does give me some cause for concern, because no matter how much I don't think that that's what happened, considering the history and the running methods of the UFC, that does make me think that there's some weight to that argument.
I agree wholeheartedly.
And he does have a point in saying, I beat Edgar in the first third, fourth, and fifth rounds in terms of striking. And as you can see on the screen here, that is correct. That is what happened.
That's why I was leaning more towards the split decision in his favor, because he was not landing strike combinations the same way Edgar was.
Exactly.
But his hooks seemed to do more damage in those combinations, along with, since Frankie's his goal was to move around, mix up his strikes and takedowns, Pedro tried to shut that down with using the leg kick, which he did very effectively. And
sure.
I thought that might have alone got him the decision, as we've seen it happen in other fights. But he might have some pull with the argument. But they both looked to make like this could have been a 6-round fight. They both had the cardio to go.
Nobody was breathing hard.
Pace. They kept up the same pace from round 1 to round 5, and it's really just like you said earlier, I didn't want to be the judge in this one.
Now, going back to that argument, though, you could argue that if we were to look at the fight between, say, Jose Aldo and Marlon Moraes, which we've talked about before, in the controversy surrounding that, where Jose Aldo beat Marlon in a 3-round fight, beat Marlon in all the striking in each round.
Would be the favorite.
Would have been the favorite, because that was his first time down in bantamweight as well. Beat him on the striking. However, Marlon got maybe like 1 or 2 takedowns pretty early on.
Along with rocking him in the first exchange.
And then was able to really secure the victory there in the decision. So that's another reason I'm like, oh, well, the whole popularity contest in terms of, these specific fights just may not have really been a huge factor here. I don't know. I mean, one thing that I thought of was, obviously I was like, okay, well, I believe Pedro's winning this in certain moments. But when I saw round number 2 where Edgar was making the adjustments, he was really staying out of the range of Munhoz. But I do think that one thing that was just really pertinent throughout the whole fight was just Edgar's head movement and being able to constantly dodge and duck out of the way of these strikes and come up with great counters. I think is what is part of the reason that Edgar pulled out a victory here, is just because I'd say he probably just looked better than Munhoz. If we were talking straight visually based on how each fighter performed, each fighter performed to the 100%. I thought each one was just going at it. But if we were to say which one looked better, the better fighter, the fresher fighter,
you would have to say Frankie.
I'd have to say Frankie, just because he's mixing in the takedown attempts and the strikes. I mean, he's mixing in spinning back fists, spinning side kicks. He's doing the head movement like I talked about. He's dodging these crazy attacks. He's getting out of the way a lot. He's staying away from damage. Even though the scorecards say that Munhoz is effectively winning here in terms of the amount of strikes. If you look closely at the numbers, all the way up until the 5th round, it's Frankie Edgar who is throwing the most punches. It may be Munhoz that's landing the most, but Edgar's the one that's throwing more volume. So it looks like he's a more active fighter. His head movement looks really, really good. His speed looks really, really good. And his striking looks really, really good. If we were just going based on solely visual, what we see, if we were judges, I could see how judges give the split decision to Edgar. However, it is pretty amazing to me to think that one of the judges gave the part of his decision to Munhoz 49-46.
Very strange.
Yeah, he was very in favor of Pedro's. It was pretty amazing to me because the other 2 judges went pretty even, 47-48. But for Sal D'Amato to give 49-46 to Munhoz makes you think that he really saw what possibly everybody else was watching and what everybody else could see. I don't know, though, because then you had other people that were saying that they were given the fight. If we were just talking about other people outside of the judges, you had other people talking about giving Edgar
3-1.
going into 3-1 going into the fifth. Pretty interesting. But then you hear from Pedro and Pedro's team how Pedro's coaches would come up to him and said, I don't remember what they were reading, but on the internet they're looking at these people that are giving out out of 20 fights. Pedro's winning. Pedro won like 17 people's decisions.
Exactly.
And only 3 people gave it to Edgar. So I don't know. I think it was just that close. I think it was that razor thin because you have to account, like I said, you have to account for those takedowns. And we talk about all the time the effectiveness of those takedowns. Those takedowns were not Edgar didn't do anything with those takedowns. But he got some good clinch control in there. He got a couple of good clinch strikes. Like I said, a lot of it also just comes down visually. A lot of those uppercuts Edgar was throwing connected very, very clean. And going into even the second and third, Munhoz is already cut. You know, he's already swelling up. He's already bleeding pretty bad. And it's not until the fourth and fifth does Edgar start getting cut and his leg starts swelling up real bad. So I don't know, man. I mean, that's just rough. That's rough. And I really was pulling for Munhoz going into this because obviously being the young Punisher, I'm obviously going to support you. And not to mention that for an up-and-comer like this guy who's been around for a long time too, for an up-and-comer like this guy to beat someone like Edgar, that would have been 2 former UFC champions under his belt.
And that would have been legendary already.
Of course, that definitely would have put you in title contention immediately. You know, he was ranked number 5. Now Edgar's probably going to either steal that spot or crack the top 8 at least. But I have, you know, obviously I feel like commentators like Dominic Cruz really said it best when they were analyzing some of the past exploitations of Munhoz, is that Munhoz is a great finisher. He wins fights by finishes, but he loses fights by decision.
Yeah.
And I think that there was no truer case than what we saw tonight. He just couldn't get his hands on Edgar enough. And Edgar, we know, is literally made out of concrete, gravel. The guy's got, you know, gravel in his guts, spit in his eyes. He's the embodiment of grit. You know, he is a tough son of a bitch. And I'll be one of the first to admit that I wasn't necessarily clowning Edgar, but I was actually talking to people at work about how Edgar was on his way out.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up, is how you really can't just count Frankie Edgar out.
Yeah.
Because he'll come back, even though he's on, I believe it was a 3-fight losing streak.
Mm-hmm. Something like that.
Going into this fight, and I was thinking the same thing, that if he doesn't pull something out of his ass right now, he's gonna go out, and he's gonna go out with a whimper.
Yeah, and the thing that, but watching the fight, I think what cemented it for me as to why Edgar had the chance to win was because of something that I hadn't thought about until I saw him right next to someone like Munhoz, in the fact that they were literally like the same size. His entire career, Frankie Edgar has fought guys that are bigger than him.
And now he's fighting people the same size.
Exactly. So it's almost like he's given himself some kind of advantage to where he has an extra level of toughness. He has an extra layer of ability that puts him above some of these smaller guys. Now that he's in that pool with them, he's fighting alongside them and going toe to toe with them. And you can really say that about someone like Edgar because he has fought up his entire career, but he's always really been a 135er. You can't really say that about guys like, let's say, Jose Aldo, who fought at 145 for a good majority of his career, was one of the greatest featherweights of all time, but was always a 145er. And then cutting down to 135, you know, that looked rough. He didn't look awful. I actually thought he looked pretty decent, but I mean, a lot of people thought he looked rough. A lot of people thought he was a walking skeleton. And when you're a bigger guy, but you're losing that weight and you're cutting down, you do lose a little bit of that speed and power because you're not.
Somehow Paulo Costa is just a monster no matter what.
Yeah, pretty much. Or somebody like Anthony Rumble Johnson. If we're talking about someone else who's fought in 3 different weight divisions, middleweight, light heavyweight, heavyweight. I mean, the guy's a monster. The guy's an absolute monster. And now it's pretty cool that Edgar has become the 11th person in UFC history to have wins in 3 different divisions. So
amazing. He's got a future Hall of Famer for sure.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's literally how people refer to him. That's Frankie the Answer Edgar, future Hall of Famer. No doubt about it. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's next for Edgar. I don't know if you have an idea of who could be next for him, but I'd love to hear it if you do.
I was actually thinking having him fight Jose.
Dude, that would be badass.
Right? They're both a little bit older. Both new to bantamweight. Jose just fought for the title. It's a good another fight to have if you are trying to push Frankie to push for title contender. I've had him fight the person who just fought for the title.
Why not? Yeah, it doesn't matter that Jose Aldo's technically on a 2-fight losing streak in bantamweight right now.
Along with Frankie Edgar was in a 3-fight losing streak in featherweight and lightweight.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be pretty cool. Munhoz, where do you go from here?
Somebody in the top 10.
Yeah.
Right now, the division bantamweight is one of the craziest divisions right now. So really, you pair him up with anybody, and it's a good fight.
Yeah. So fingers crossed. Hopefully, those guys land on their feet where they need to. So yeah. So moving on, we basically just got the rest of the card to talk about. Really,
it's all finishes from here on out.
Pretty much, like the whole rest of the main card definitely had some finishes. And I do want to briefly talk about some stuff. This card went through a roller coaster of development to get made. And part of the reason I feel like there were so many finishes on the card is because nearly every fighter on this card
didn't know they were going to be fighting.
Exactly. Either got 6 days or less notice. I mean, even Frankie Edgar and Pedro Munhoz weren't even supposed to fight the main event on this card. Like initially, Colby Covington and Tyron Woodley were slated as the main event for this card. And Tyron Woodley said that that's not enough time. It's not a good date, to finish camp. So that got moved forward. You had Uriah Hall and Yoel Romero that were slated for this event, canceled due to undisclosed reasons. There was a lot of undisclosed reasons. I've actually got some literature pulled up right here. I'm trying to see here. Yeah, so
you're getting information from Wikipedia now.
I've looked at other sources to try and find this stuff.
There
goes our credibility. You didn't have to say anything.
I'm just kidding.
But basically we had, like for instance, Matthew Semmelsberger, who was fighting on the prelims. He was supposed to fight Philip Rowe. However, Rowe pulled out of the bout citing a toe injury. Semmelsberger faced fellow newcomer Carlton Minus. So that was both the fighters' UFC debut. So Carlton Minus's UFC debut came as a replacement to another fighter. And then we had heard that Angela Hill and Michelle Watterson were supposed to fight for the event. But again, due to undisclosed personal reasons for Watterson, the bout was moved to UFC Fight Night 177. So we have that to look forward to in the future. A light heavyweight bout between Jorge Gonzalez and Hurricane Ike Villanueva was actually expected to take place at UFC 252. However, due to alleged visa issues for Gonzalez, he had to pull out of the event. So then I'll move this down here. So then when going into this event, Gonzalez was just removed entirely for undisclosed reasons, and Jordan Wright got put onto the show, who kicked some ass, and we'll get to his fight briefly. And then we had promotional newcomer Jared Gooden, who was expected to face Dwight Grant. However, Gooden pulled out during the lead up with an undisclosed injury yet again. Kalen Bourne was announced as a replacement. However, Bourne pulled out of the fight on the day of the weigh-ins due to undisclosed personal issues. And then we had another bout between Takashi Sato and Daniel Rodriguez. However, Sato was, for some reason, not cleared by the Nevada State Athletic Commission medical personnel to fight. So then you had Dwight Grant and Daniel Rodriguez ended up getting paired together. So men that were literally training to fight completely other people now suddenly got turned around and had to fight each other.
Which led to a crazy finish.
Exactly. And that brings up my point about how all these short notice schedulings is what short notice cancellations and subsequent schedulings is what led to so many crazy finishes, is because you had people that just weren't prepared to fight these people. Bout between Maki Patillo and promotional newcomer Impa Kasanganya. We talked about him in the Contender Series.
Yes.
Was briefly linked to the event. However, promotion officials elected to move the pairing a week later to Smith and Rochik for, yet again, say with me,
undisclosed reasons.
Exactly. And then the final one, which is probably was probably my favorite fight of the night overall, was
you're gonna keep talking about it every time.
Was expected to face fellow newcomer Timur Valiev at the event, Dagestani fighter. However, his opponent was removed from the fight on August 20th after testing positive for COVID-19 and replaced by Trevin Jones. And this was Trevin Jones' UFC debut. And this was also the first time I've ever seen a UFC catchweight bout. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They don't happen very often.
So this time I actually do want to start with the prelims because I have to talk about Trevin Jones and Timur Valiev.
All right. I wasn't sure if we were going to do it or not. All right, let's go.
All right. So basically, so Timur Valiev just comes out and he is just swamping Trevin Jones. I mean, he is
destroying him.
He's absolutely dominating round one.
It's like, all right, that's it.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure it was in round one. Yes, it was. It was towards the end of round one where Valiev lands like this crazy front kick right into the solar plexus of Jones. And Jones he's visibly hurt. Like, he's keeling over. He literally crouches down, puts his hands up, but then he stands back up. And he's
bet thrown up if he hit him just a little bit harder.
I mean, he's taking shots, he's taking hits, but he's dodging punches. And the ref is just about to stop it, too, because you hear him saying, defend yourself, Jones. Defend yourself, Jones.
Fight back.
Defend it. Fight back or I'm going to stop it. And then Jones eventually, I mean, I don't know how he did it, man. But he survived that round. He survived that last 2 minutes or whatever it was.
When somebody falls over like that from a body kick, they usually stop it. So I was just like, ref.
Yeah, right.
You're not doing what other refs do. Like, you're breaking the code of conduct right now, and it kept going, and then amazingly, he comes back.
Yep. Round number 2, I think there was like a takedown or something from Valiev. Basically, it got to a point where Timur was just like, "Oh, I'm kicking this guy's ass." And he's getting, and to credit to Valiev, I mean, he was doing a lot of good feints. He was keeping Jones guessing a lot. That kept Jones from really firing off on a lot of strikes, just because he didn't know where Valiev was going. You know, this guy's pumping this way with a straight jab, but then next thing you know, he's throwing flying kicks. I mean, the guy was just all over the place. And frankly, in my opinion, I think he got really overzealous. He got really cocky. Because he was like, I'm just kicking this guy's ass, I almost finished him in the first.
It was a mixture. It was a mixture of, oh, I'm kicking this guy's ass, and the other guy throwing haymakers, trying to get as lucky as possible, and you just met in the middle.
Yeah, he fakes the left, and he throws this crazy right check hook. Boom, clocks the guy right on the chin. Out. He comes down hard, ground and pound. And just finishes him, and it blew me away because you could tell the guy was out because the ref tried stopping it, and Valiev still tried to continue a takedown attempt or something. And to me, that's when the guy's out. That's like when Charles Oliveira choked out
Kevin Lee.
Kevin Lee, yeah. And
Yeah.
Kevin Lee was out, but then he kept trying to fight even though the ref was calling it. So yeah, that to me was probably one of the greatest comebacks ever, because he was because Jones was like a plus 500 underdog.
Yeah.
Going into that, and
he got really, really creative and lucky with that one.
I know, and I mean, just that's like dreams. That's what dreams are made of, right there.
Right there is Blood's right hooks.
It was just amazing. So yeah, so that was great. Really enjoyed that. I mean, just what an opener! I know there could not have been a better way to open a UFC event than that.
I got the notification on my phone. I was like, I want to finish this episode of Peaky Blinders. Shout out to Netflix. You know what I'm saying? I was like, oh, there's like 5 minutes left. I could do it. And I got it on, and they just finished the announcements, and I started watching, and I was like, oh, it's already almost over when he hit the solar plex kick. Mm-hmm. And then I was like hooked. I was hooked immediately.
Oh, yeah.
That last 2 minutes, I was like, my heart was palpitating. I just got done with watching gangsters attacking bars and burning down buildings, and then right into people getting kicked in the solar plexus. Like, I was in from the minute it started.
Hell yeah, man. So then moving into the second fight of the night, which is our one of our only decisions. Matthew Semmelsberger and Carlton Minus. These guys, this is their UFC debut for both men, and just really good overall. There were a couple times where Matthew drops Minus, almost got the finish a couple of times. Really just
also believe that there should have been a finish. I believe it was round 2. Is that when he dropped him, or is it round 1?
I believe it was round 2, because they were just on each other in round 1.
Yeah, that's what I was remembering. So in round 2, when he dropped him and he started to pummel him a little bit, I feel like they could have been a stoppage there.
Yeah.
Just because Minus wasn't really fighting back for a few moments. He really didn't seem like he was doing enough output to keep the fight going.
Yeah. But so that kind of just
still looked all around good debut.
Yeah, great for both guys, honestly. And really good for Carlton Minus, just as a performance overall, because he didn't know he was coming to fight in the UFC. Semmelsberger knew he was fighting in the UFC, so he knew he had an opponent. Minus didn't know he had an opponent.
Exactly. I feel like with all of the cancellations and new stuff, this is when new up-and-coming contenders really need to, really can grab a chance.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a lot of the new fighters are trying to get more money, trying to do this, trying to do that, and then there's these new guys coming in that just want a chance. They
just want to fight. They just want to showcase their skills.
And win or lose, you got your name out there. You're doing more. It's almost better because it's like the people who really want to be there are there.
Exactly, and that brings me to our next bout of the night, light heavyweight with Jordan Wright, who was the stand-in for I believe it was Jorge Gonzalez to fight Ike Villanueva. And this guy really stood out to me. First of all, he opens the fight with that spinning heel hook. Spinning heel kick. Yeah.
It very much reminded me of when JDS hit it on Mark Hunt.
Yeah.
When you see two really big guys do it, it looks way crazier when two bigger guys are doing it.
I mean, it was textbook level perfect. He snapped the guy,
the forehead,
and immediately dropped him with it. And it was great too when you hear after the fight in the post-fight interview, he said, for 6 days, I've literally been visualizing doing that.
I love when they say that.
And doing it, and it worked. And he was like, obviously I was surprised. Everybody was surprised when Villanueva stood back up from it.
Yeah, I was just like, he's out, and then he popped. Like this night, probably one of the most, as of recently, since the Justin Gaethje Tony Ferguson fight, this is the most I've been like talking to myself, like watching it in my room, sitting in a chair, being like, all right, dude, you're at, like, oh my God, he's out. Oh, yeah. He got back up. What are you like? It felt like I was sitting around eating nachos with the boys, you know.
Nice. Yeah, man, it was just a baller. It was a banger of an event, and honestly, and especially when Villanueva obviously was like, well, I can't stand at a range with this guy, or else I'm gonna get kicked in the face like that again. And he decides to close the distance and get in the clinch. But he didn't really have any clinch defense. And then you've got Jordan Wright, who's just hammering with these knees, oh my god, and he split him open with that one knee in his eye. Oh my god, it was like right here, something like that. Do you want to see if I can find a picture of it?
No. Why do you do this to me?
Ike Villanueva.
This, I feel like this might be worse than the Robbie Lawler and the Alistar Overeem.
Oh yeah.
Like, because this one's.
Oh man, you can literally see his brain.
No, that's not his. That's his muscle fiber.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like the guy's.
Oh,
you know how
so
like
gross.
You remember when Nate Diaz got cut against Jorge Masvidal and his whole eyebrow was just off his face? That's exactly. This is the other side
of the eyebrow.
I mean, wow. And that was on the third knee too.
Yeah, and you can literally see when it pops.
And then it just starts gushing blood.
All right, I'm just getting off my screen.
Okay.
It's making me like sweaty.
Wow.
I don't know. The lip ones, like the one where Robbie Lawler's lip is split and Alistar Overeem's one is split. Or like even Nate Diaz when it's over here, but for some reason when it's right here, it makes me so uncomfortable.
It's nasty. But yeah, so then we had I'm sorry I had to do that to you guys.
I know, you always do it.
Because it's so cool. But yeah, obviously that eye, as soon as the ref was like, all right, we got to check this eye. And as soon as the doctor rolled up, he was like, done. We're done. He wiped it, he dabbed it. And then as soon as he got like even the slightest image of it, he was like, done. We're done. We can't do this.
I think that was the quickest doctor stoppage because sometimes they'll argue and say, no, I'm okay. He just went, no.
Because it's just so obvious. Like, ugh.
If I was that doctor, I would have opened the cage, said no, and walked back out. I wouldn't even look at him.
Wouldn't have even like used a tissue to wipe the blood away or anything.
Like, had some glasses, go, nope.
Yeah.
Walk back out. Do it.
So moving into our we had a women's strawweight bout with Mizuki Inoue versus Amanda Lemos. Mizuki being a protege of Mr. Aljamain Sterling. But honestly, when it came to Amanda Lemos, she just dominated the fight. I mean, obviously this was another decision, but she really dominated this fight. And I mean, when it came to clinch control, it was all Mizuki. But when it came to ground control, when it came to striking, it was all Lemos. And that really had a lot to do with the fact that Lemos was just way stronger. When it came to this fight, really the thing that stood out the most from Mizuki for me was that she was literally right next to her corner. And when there's no crowd and you can hear your corner perfectly, one thing that people commentate a lot on is how fighters are doing exactly what their coaches are saying because they can hear them now. But when Mizuki was literally right next to Aljamain Sterling and he's giving her commands, she just wasn't really doing anything. She wasn't really doing what he asked her to do. He was like foot stomp, didn't do anything. He was like high crotch, single leg, didn't do anything. And it kind of perplexed me a little bit because it was like, like that's your coach, like you're kind of supposed to do what he asks. Because I mean, she just wasn't really doing anything with the clinch. And it got to a point where Amanda just had to just buy her time and play off the fence, get off there, and then just land some crazy spinning elbows. She completely stuffed a takedown attempt on Mizuki, literally at one point almost picked her up and slammed her down, just brutalizing her with her immense physical strength. Very, very very unanimous decision here, being our second decision of the night. And from this point out, there were no more decisions. There were just
until the main event.
But we had this is the fight between Daniel Rodriguez and Dwight Grant, where the two men were training for. This is where two guys were literally training for two other opponents, and then had to turn it around on two guys, on themselves. This was the fight where I was like, wow, Dwight Grant probably should have got that stoppage in round number 1.
That's exactly what I thought. Because it's one of those things where it's like, if this is the criteria for a stoppage, he met that criteria. But then to have him, but I also kind of agree with it because he burned himself out so much that he wasn't able to continue for the rest of the fight, which in of itself proves that he probably shouldn't have got that stoppage, and he wouldn't have won if he didn't hit that mark early.
Yeah, because here's the thing. It's one, I can understand it because Daniel Rodriguez was still conscious and he's still defending himself. He's still got his hands up and he's still moving, but Dwight Grant is just hitting him, and he's landing all these shots, and he's just going to town. I bet Dominic Cruz really wanted to have that ref for his fight. That's for
what
sure.
He was thinking the whole time.
For sure. But then when Daniel Rodriguez drops Dwight Grant, I think what set the switch off for the ref.
And he dropped more unconscious.
Yeah, he definitely dropped him twice within like 5 seconds. Technically, he dropped him 3 times within like 60 seconds because on the break from Rodriguez's defense after defending off TKO, he stood up and caught Grant with a hook that sent Grant to the canvas. Grant scrambled back up right away, but he was clearly wobbled, and he hadn't collected his footing enough. And this is kind of what led to Rodriguez swarming him and then hitting him with those strikes that dropped him the first time. Grant was able to get right back up, but then got dropped immediately again. His legs just went out from under him, and I think that's what set the ref to be like, hey, you're out. You're done. It's one of those things where it's like, obviously I agree with that stoppage if that's what happened first, but it's like you see so many other refs
stop it at that moment in the first.
Stop it at the moment where Rodriguez is the one on the receiving end of on the strikes. So I don't know. It's just it's just really odd. But I mean, it's a good win for Rodriguez. No, not taking that away from him at all. But yeah, so now we're moving into what I think is, what is that squeaking noise? Do you hear that?
Yeah, it's not coming from my end.
It's coming from my end. Sorry. Okay, there it goes. It's my neighbors above me. I think we're doing something.
Okay,
I don't know if they're like,
but I wasn't.
I don't know if they're like fucking on the couch or something in their living room or what. But that's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
Oh, there it goes again.
Oh, he's putting some humps in.
Yeah. Maybe it's like a kid, their kid or something. I don't know. But anyway, this is what I wanted to talk about the most tonight in terms of like a little aside. We have the biggest deficit between an underdog and a favorite since Holly Holm beat Ronda Rousey.
Yeah.
Shauna Dobson. I'm going to pull it up right here because I have it right here. I pulled it up exactly for this purpose. Shauna Dobson was a plus 800 underdog. And her opponent, Maria Agapova, was a minus 1250 favorite. She was on a 3-fight finishing streak. Dobson was 3-4 on a 3-fight losing streak. And
it's literally insane.
It's the craziest thing that could have ever happened.
I didn't know the statistics like that. I'm pretty sure I heard them. Like somebody said something about it, what like the commentators or something. But when I saw the record, I was like, that's crazy that she's 3-4 in fighting in the UFC.
I know. I think that's just because women's MMA still doesn't have as at least in the UFC doesn't have as wide of a pool. Because you wouldn't because there's no way you would see something like that in a men's division. You would never see a person that's got a losing record competing in the men's division of the UFC.
Because along with the COVID and everything going on, it's hard to get everybody along. And with it being such a small pool and all of the visa and health issues, it's even getting smaller.
Yeah. And so you had Agapova, who is another killer from Kazakhstan. She's a 2-time boxing champion. She came out hot in the first round. And she laid it on. I'm talking, she poured hot lead on Dobson, man. Like she just went to town. She went to town. She went to the grocery store. She went to the hotel. She fucked your mom. She went all over the world on Dobson and was crushing her. And then Dobson obviously she got like a good takedown in round 1. I think that's how she kind of finished out the round. But Agapova got right back up to her feet. But then as soon as the second round started, man, something happened. Something changed.
Something happened. Something happened, man.
Something happened.
She was coming. She went for her soul. She came. She went. She saw. She conquered. She got out of there 4-4. She's back on it.
The body snatchers literally came down and replaced Agapova with a fucking embryo or something, man. She fucking little plant pod seed. It was not the same Agapova from round 1.
She went from standing in one position to being everywhere.
Exactly. But it made sense because the Dominic Cruz, I fucking love Dominic Cruz as a commentator, man, because he introduced a phrase to me that I had not heard before called an adrenaline dump. Now, I've probably heard it before, but it did not have as much impact as it did in this fight, and I will never forget it again because of this. So she must have expended so much energy in round number 1, going for that finish, throwing as many strikes as she did, that by the time the second round had started, she had lost it. She had lost any ounce of power, energy, and ferocity that she had to offer. And I think I think in combination with that and the fact that something had happened in the second round to also create the reverse positions for Dobson to get on top, as you can see on screen here. I think because remember, Agapova was on top. She was on top of Dobson, raining down strikes. And here's what I think happened. I don't have footage of it, but here's what I saw taking place. Agapova fell, and she fell on Dobson's elbow. I'm talking chin right on the elbow. And so I think it was a combination of her adrenaline dump and that elbow that caused the tides to turn, Dobson to reverse the position and rain down. What you can see right here on screen was just punishment. And then Agapova, who literally just couldn't tell where she was. And then I loved it. You had Dobson running around the octagon after that in the post interviews, just screaming, "Underdog, underdog,
Wolverines!"
Oh, it was great. And I tell you what, if you had just bet $50 on Dobson, man, you would be making fucking bank.
I'm going to start betting on these fights now. I don't care. Whatever the craziest, whatever the underdog is, let's make some money on the side, you know?
Man, it was just nuts, dude. I've never seen – that is the biggest upset I have ever fucking seen. And I've seen upsets before. We've seen underdogs before. We watched the Contender Series this past Tuesday, and the older Kosi, Orion Kosi, was the underdog in that fight, and he came back and won in the third. But this is probably the biggest numbers-wise underdog I've ever seen. Not just numbers. We're talking skill level. Dobson, don't get me wrong, Dobson's great, but she was not on the same striking level as Agapova. Like I said, 2-time boxing champion. But Dobson does have a wrestling pedigree, and that seemed to give her some amount of advantage into the fight. But I tell you, man, like I just we were talking about Trevin Jones and how he came back earlier in the fight.
Very
This is what dreams are made of. This right here is what dreams are made of.
It was what I was talking about. All these people that are on the undercards usually are getting main event spots. It's just whoever is there to sign their name.
Crazy, man.
And that's how you get to places, is being in the right spot when an opportunity arises.
I mean, that literally is going to launch her into the stratosphere. That's not necessarily saying that that's going to give her title fights or anything, because I don't think that's what's going to happen. But that's definitely.
Your name is out there on a main event spot or a main event card.
Yep, your name is out there. You've got a great. You just, like I said, it's like when Holly Holm beat Ronda Rousey. Like, people are going to know who you are now. You just beat one of the greatest odds of all time. And I just can't believe it, man. I just can't believe it. But great for her. And I can't wait to see more from her. So, moving on. We have 2 more fights. And it was between Austin Hubbard and Joe Salecki. I believe Austin Hubbard is a Contender Series alumni. Salecki, I believe, might also be an alumni, but I can't remember if that was true or not. But both men fought really good. However, there was a submission finish with a standing rear naked choke.
Made it look easy.
Oh, yeah. Composure was just tight, you know? Like, he didn't sweat it at all. He didn't panic at all. He was just all over it, man. He literally, he was all over the guy. So that was great. Stuck to that guy like a backpack, got that body triangle in tight, used his legs, used the hooks that he had on the guy to climb the body. I mean, it was just amazing. Yeah. And got that nice little tap right there. And so then we have the final fight we're going to talk about tonight on the show is a light heavyweight bout between Marcin Prachinio. Excuse me. I'm not good at the Polish names. Versus Mike Rodriguez. And this was another finish. This was one of those finishes where I saw it and it was like he Rodriguez kind of just like he's got Marcin in the clinch, and he kind of just like circles him around into this big elbow, and that was one of those like knockouts where you see the person get hit in the head and their neurons, their whole body just fires off because he got struck in the head and he's literally like this falling down.
Yeah. His brain said, we can't take this anymore. We need to go to sleep for a second.
He said, I'm well tired.
You
just went down.
Hear the old computer. Bum, 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 bum.
Nice. Rebooting. And he hits the ground. And my man Rodriguez just finishes him. He hit him with a good 1, 2. And he was done. He was out. His eyes are literally in the back of his head. And that's the call for it, man. That was great. That was amazing. Another great finish. And I tell you, man, I don't think any other fight aside from the fights that went to decision made it into the third round.
No, I believe it was all first and second round finishes.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's the shit I like to see. It was it was all those quick finishes that made the event short, and it was the fact that there was a whole nother fight that was supposed to be on this card that, like I said earlier, got moved to the Anthony Smith card a week from now that turned this initial 10-fight event into a 9-fight event. So
and then along with almost every fight going to a finish, I was in bed by 11 almost.
Pretty much, yeah. It started at 6:30 with the prelims and ended at like 10:30, I'm pretty sure.
Just about.
Yeah. Which sounds long, but usually they go on for like 5 to 6 hours.
Whenever it starts at 7 and we're up to 2 a.m. sometimes.
Oh, God. I know.
It's like a whole shift at work just preparing to do a podcast, dude. And watching some great fights.
Yeah. So that was great. We had some great stuff going on there. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. So yeah. Oh, so unless you've got anything else to say, I think we can end the show off tonight right now.
There's one thing I want to say.
Okay.
So I think that if the pandemic and fighting after the pandemic and after the quarantine and all that, if we've learned anything, it's that if you have a mullet, your power punches get added by 10 points.
Yes, it says in the options menu that the mullet equipment adds that extra 10 points.
It says right there, mullet adds yeet points.
Yeet.
All right. Live long and prosper. May the force be with you. Great event. Tune in. Like and comment. Subscribe. Ninth corner of the Octagon. Garrett Lincoln signing off.
Boom.